Hello YouTube and welcome back to the channel outside the target demographic. Today I have a problem with my watch and I'm wondering if you can't figure it out. Let's get started. So I'm going to talk for exactly a minute and you're going to see what the problem is in 1 minute. Allow me to zoom in for you. So the point of a clock is to tell you the time, and that becomes a problem in 30 seconds. Super riveting stuff. Basically, for the last week and a half, I've been chasing wildly fluctuating rate variances. So one day I would gain like 23 seconds, the next day I would lose 7. I'm borderline on diagnosed OCD, so I do have a couple apps that will audibly track the tick rate, and then I also can synchronize it to a known time and it will tell me if I'm plus or minus. But right here you can see I have a problem. And what I've noticed is, again, I was running into a fluctuating rate error, and now I get to the point where the watch binds up, and you have to give it a pretty decent tap to get it to start running again. So I knew it would be 1 minute, and the reason I know that is what we're running into. I'm going to use a toothpick. The second hand and or the minute hand is misaligned. So a couple of YouTube videos searching around has diagnosed that the second hand, or any of these hands really, can sit instead of horizontal to the face, to the green dial. Instead of sitting like this, it will sit like this. And while half the time that will make it be further away, as it continues around its axis, it could bind against either the dial or, in my case, the lollipop of the second hand engages my minute hand and binds up the action. Now, how I would diagnose this is, again, I know it's exactly 1 minute. It didn't tick for 2 hours and then stop. It would bind up at exactly the same 54 seconds. Now, the interesting part of this was it did this morning. That's how I knew that it was binding up. But once we got past like 9 o'clock, 9:30, it continued keeping time throughout the rest of the day. Here it is the same time, but PM versus AM, in the evening versus the morning. But it is the same time as far as the analog dial is concerned. And we now have a binding issue. So I've had this watch for 4 years. This is not a new watch. Think about what your arms do. They're constantly swinging by your hips as you're walking, running, jostling in a car. Every vibration you feel through the suspension of your car, motorcycle, bicycle, walking around is in some way being translated into this mechanical device that's thin enough, small enough, light enough to fit on your wrist. So with time, I'm pretty sure none of these have bent, but all 3 of them, 1, 2, 3, will sit on the same axle. And there will be 3 different levels of that axle that will spin the hour, minute, second hand at different rates. But all it takes is a little bit of jostling, and one has now changed its angle enough where it is engaging on another hand. So what we're going to do is take it apart. So you'll want to make sure you are not in a dusty environment. Mine takes a special tool to unlock. I usually do have it tightened all the way. Since I've been trying to, in vain, track the time or correct the fluctuating rates, I have it just thumb tight. So I'm able to unscrew it without the tool. You may need a tool or a screwdriver, whatever you need to get it in here. This is not solely a mechanical or automatic watch issue. It is an analog watch issue. So if you have hands and a dial versus a digital display, you could at some point, for whatever reason, age, wear and tear, dropping it on the concrete, what have you, you could end up having this issue. So we know that there is the, we'll call it reverse crown, the back side of the crown. This is an exhibitioner casing, so some of them will be completely metal. Mine, I can see the internals, which I like. What we have here is the mainspring, and I can adjust the rate by adjusting this lever, but that's not what we're doing today. Allow me, it's a little strong. That's better. All right, so what we're looking for, I'm going to move that out of the way. I'm pretty sure it is this guy right here. What I need to do is first I'm going to arrest the movement. So I'm going to pull the crown out as far as it will go. When I do that, you'll notice we do not have ticking. It is all bound up. Don't really want anything moving while I'm doing this. I move this out of the way. Pretty sure it is this guy that I need to push. What I'm trying to do is remove the crown. Once I get the crown out, I can remove the movement and we can correct those hands. Allow me to get in a little closer and confirm where it is I'm prodding on this guy. All right, so it turns out you have to push the crown all the way in, negating my whole not having your movement move thing. And what you're going to be looking for is where I was prodding, but it hides itself when your crown is removed. So you have a little bar right here. It almost looks like an L. And you're going to push on the far end of that. And that's going to allow your crown to pull out. The reason I'm using a wooden toothpick is everything in here is both metal and fragile. And wood is non-magnetic, non-ferrous, so I'm not going to magnetize anything in here. I'm probably not going to scratch anything in here. I imagine this wood is going to be softer and give sooner than anything metal in here. So it's a very risk-free way of gaining access and removing pieces, parts. At this point, what I want to do is make sure I have a soft landing. At this point, we have a paper towel. I'm going to invert this onto the paper towel. Give it a couple taps to see if it'll come out, which it won't. Again, we're looking to give it a nice soft landing here. And I'm just going to pry at something non-moving. You want it to be non-moving. I was pulling on this shelf right here. I'm going to try and counter that across the way. Okay, I know that popped free. All right, so this is my movement free of my case. Oh, that lined up pretty nicely. Shabao. While I'm here, with compressed air out of my lungs, I'm going to blow the inside and outside of that. We're going to put it aside. Same with these two things. And what I'm looking to do is I want to make sure and look at this sideways. And I'm looking for which hand is more pronounced teeter-tottering than the rest of them. And it looks like it's going to be my minute hand. So I'm going to try bending at the furthest end, just the tip, giggity. I'm going to apply a little bit of pressure to that. Again, what catches is the lollipop of the second hand. So I want to make sure that that doesn't bind. It doesn't bind on the hour hand, and it shouldn't, because you have hour hand is closest to the face, then the minute hand, then the second hand. So your smallest hand moving the slowest will be closest to the face, if that helps you at all. The bind happens with the second hand lollipop engaging with the minute hand. And right now it is clearing. If I turn it sideways during that movement, it is quite close. Close enough that I'm pretty sure I didn't bend it enough out of the way, so I'm going to try again. You're going to get the most flex, but the least amount of memory the furthest out. Also note, in the middle you have a white diamond diameter, and then in the middle you have the loom. What the loom does, sorry about that stroke seizure inducing moment there. So what the loom does is it glows in the dark, right? So you can read it at night. That loom is basically a almost a toothpaste kind of consistency until it dries, and then it's a paint. So it's very brittle. Here again, you can see just how close that lollipop is. So I'm going to try adjusting the minute hand a little bit more. Basically, you're looking for the gap here being the same distance here. If it is, then it's probably the second hand, which to be fair is the thinnest, right? Hand on here, so it is most likely to bend. And you can see just enough of a gap there that the pointed end was not the issue. The lollipop end is. And you know what? The more I'm looking at it, I think we're all right. So you want to check both the straightness of your hand. If it's like this, you're okay. If it has a bend in it, then you need to try flexing flat that bend, trying to iron out that bend. So your concern is both the bend that your hand may or may not have, and once you get that level, or once you get that flat, you want to correct any variances in levelness. So what I think we're running into here is my minute hand does get a little taller towards the tip. And I'm trying to determine, and I'm going to move away from the camera here. I'm trying to determine if that second hand, I would say that's darn near flat. So I do not believe my problem is the second hand. I believe it's solely the minute hand. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to start at the tip. That's going to flex the hand the most, but it's also going to return from that flex the easiest. It's springy. If I cannot get it to correct out here, I'm going to move closer in and just apply a little bit of pressure. I do need to watch for that second hand. I do not want to lock up the action any more than it's been locking up. Okay, I am now good and clear. I have maybe half the thickness of this toothpick difference in between the two. I don't know how well it's going to show up in camera. I will attempt to show it. While we're in here, I'm going to, man, that looks much better already. It is very, very close, so I'm going to go a little bit more. The other thing you'll want to do, and I've kind of been doing it while I've been in here, is if I shake the movement back and forth, up, down, left, right, and then at the two other directions, we'll say north, south, east, west, north, east, south, west, all that stuff. As you shake it, you're trying to see if those hands are loose enough on the center here, on the axle, as it were, to see if those hands start adjusting themselves by themselves. So that would be a way to make sure that it is securely mounted to the shaft before you try bending them into place. Now, the whole time I've been moving this, if that were the case, I would have seen it, right? So we know to that we are not in any kind of danger for that. What you can do too, instead of chasing these hands moving around, you can take the crown and put it back in and then pull the crown out as far as it can, and that will again freeze your action. It will prevent it from ticking, and that way you don't have to worry about binding up and getting the toothpick stuck in there kind of thing. You've turned the car engine off before you start going in after the spark plugs kind of thing. But I don't know how well it'll show up on camera. Let me adjust my lighting. Like this. So you have your hour, your minute, and your second hand. And we're looking for the amount of space. It's very small. We're at 4.5 times zoom right now. You can see that it just barely clears that minute hand. So you've already taken the time to get this far. You might as well check all the things. I think we're all right. Where did I put my crown? There's my crown. All right, so what we're going to do is it's a 4 o'clock crown, so we know it's going to be here. I'm going to put that back in. And I'm going to pull out as far as I can, and it locks up the action. It also allows me to move the hands. And I'm just going to do a full sweep around and make sure my minute isn't hitting my hour and my second hand is not hitting either. So at this point, go ahead and catch again. It is close, and it's going to be, but we should not have any more binding. So you can see here, we got a pretty good gap in between those two. You're kind of looking for the same gap here as you have here, which we do. And if I go around to the other side, you're going to have half the distance to do it because the lollipop is half the length of this part. But again, you're looking for the gap, and you can see we have the air gap all the way through. So I believe we are good to go. I will need to correct the time, but that's all there is to it. If the hands are loose, if they are not firmly connected to the axle, we'll call it, I'm not sure of what it's called, you'll probably either have to send it out or have a tool delivered. There is a specialty tool, either a manual one or a press, that will align these, level them, and apply the correct amount of pressure to get them all lined up. Those tools would probably be relatively cheap. You'll have to find another video or reference for that. It is not something that I needed in this one. So that's what we have. While we're in here, as hermetically sealed as these things claim to be, go ahead and, again, using compressed air from your lungs if you have to, give it a blow. At work, we have access to medical grade microscopes, and for funsies, I was looking under this guy. There appears to be a couple chips of paint, especially in the Seiko emblem there, that I cannot detect with the human eye, but it appears to be in between the middle and lower part of the E there. So give it a couple blows with compressed air, as it were, and seal it back up. Congrats on repairing your watch. Bonus for the video. I have showed this in another one of my, actually the review for this watch, as it turns out. One of the two mods I've done to this is the Noon Loom mod. So you'll notice my Noon is dead. What I did is, when the loom is not glowing at night, it essentially looks like a white or a silver dot. All I did is I took a silver Sharpie and covered up that index. So now, regardless of what time it is and how dark it is, I now know where my noon position is lined up, and I can more accurately tell the time. For whatever reason, this is one of their cheaper, if not cheapest, automatic watches offered by Seiko. They just had a dot all the way around. Now you have a triangle here to indicate your noon position, which is great if you have the light to read it, but cover your loom with just a dab of a silver Sharpie, and it now kills that index and gives you a noon or 12 o'clock index, and you'll be able to read your watch regardless of the orientation a little bit better at night. Putting it back together, you're going to want to slowly flip it over, make sure your noon is indexed close to the noon position. And you also know with my watch, it's a 4 o'clock crown index. Most watches are a 3 o'clock. So you'll see that there's going to be a groove or a cut in the plastic that's going to allow the stem of the crown to go in. So I know that that's going to be oriented relatively close. I'm not pushing on the metal. I'm trying to push in the plastic that holds the movement in place. It is going to be a pretty tight fit. I am not trying to touch or push on any of the mechanics here. There we go. So I now have it seated. I want to make sure it is oriented correctly. It would be nice if they put an index on the back here, on the off chance you have a reason to be inside this. We're going to slowly feed this through, try and get it to line up, make any adjustments, rotating the movement in the chassis if you need to feel like it's not in deep enough. So we're going to push down a little bit more, try and get it seated a little bit better. That was a click. That was a click. If this crown will go back in and you know you have it seated enough, spin the crown to make sure if it's grooved or needs to index at a certain angle, you're allowing it to do that. I'm pretty sure we're good to go. It's giving me a little bit of resistance here. Let's make sure my noon is indexed where I want it to be. feel like it could seat a little deeper, but if we look here and here, the height is going to be about the same. So do not force anything. There we go. So if my crown seats fully, then I know that I have it lined up correctly. Put the O-ring back on. Get it as far down onto the threads as you can get. It's going to be less likely to get chewed up by the threads that way. Nice. Not too much mystery there. You'll have to watch a YouTube video on how to get into your particular make, model, brand. But mine I know is a 4 o'clock crown. I've been in it a number of times. I've replaced and upgraded the movement. I've done the 12 o'clock mod that I told you about. So not my first rodeo in here. First time the hands have been bent and or misaligned. So that's a new one. But if it's not working anyways, you really have nothing to lose. If it binds at the same time every time, then odds are good you have a bent hand. If it runs for like 20 minutes and then dies, you probably have a mechanical or automatic watch mechanism issue, and that's something I can't help you with. But if you find that it binds at the same time, then it's probably a simple enough fix of realigning your hands. So hopefully that is of use to someone out there. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and leave them in the comments section below. As always, this is outside the target demographic. I appreciate your time, and I will catch you guys in the next video.